The Kuva Sobek is the latest Kuva weapon added to Warframe, and let's just say it's a very special one. For some of you out there, it will be an easy skip. For others, however, the Kuva Sobek is gonna be an absolute must-have. That's why, in today's Warframe guide, I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about this new shotgun, how it works, different builds, both budget as well as endgame ones, and, most importantly, what makes the Kuva Sobek so special, and if it is for you personally, or rather not. As always, a massive shout out to all my generous channel members who help me keep the lights on, and now, let's jump right into it. Now, first of all, since the Kuva Sobek, as the name already suggests, is a Kuva weapon, in order to acquire it for yourself, you will have to beat a Kuva Lich equipped with that weapon. Looking at how it works, this one is actually pretty simple and straightforward. The Kuva Sobek is a fully automatic Grineer shotgun, which has kind of a low fire rate, but it comes with a healthy magazine size of 20 shots. Each and every individual of those shots will fire 5 pellets, and this is already everything you need to know about how the gun works. Let's also take a look at the stats, where we see this one is a pretty balanced one, coming in at 21% crit chance with a 2.3x crit multiplier and 21 fat% status chance per projectile. This one is very high, and the Kuva Sobek mainly is a status weapon, although the crit chance and crit multiplier are high enough to justify going for a hybrid build, as we will also see here in a minute. In terms of damage, this one has quite the high output at 385 total, but in addition to what you see on screen here, since it is a Lich weapon, it will also get an additional element as a elemental progenitor, and when it comes to choosing which one you want to go for, I personally went for Heat because I wanted to try something out. However, after my testing, I would recommend definitely going for the Toxin progenitor because Toxin is such a versatile element. You can mod it into corrosive, into viral, or keep it as Toxin and against shields. So if you ask me, this is definitely the best choice. So, now that we know what the Kuva Sobek is and what it does, how about we start and take a look at the build, shall we? And just like in my last video, I also want to start this one out on the more budget-friendly approach. Now, since this is a budget build, we will not use any Prime mods, Galvanized mods, Primary Weapon Arcanes, or Exilus mods in this one. Looking back at the stats, since the Kuva Sobek is mainly a status weapon, but has enough crit characteristics to justify going for a hybrid build, this is exactly what we're going to go for with this one. Starting out with the standard mods, Point Blank for more base damage, Health Chamber for more multi-shot, Critical Deceleration for more crit chance, and Ravage to increase the crit damage. Now, when it comes to crit, it is very important that you go for Critical Deceleration because this one gives you plus 200% crit chance, whereas the other option, Blunderbuss, would only give you 90%. That is a big difference and definitely worth it. As for the crit damage, there is also an alternative where you could swap out Ravage for Shrapnel Shot because even though this one only triggers on kill, it gives you plus 99% crit damage, not just plus 60, so you also get a definite boost from using this one. And after damage, multi-shot, and crit is taken care of, the next thing we do is go for the element, and because of the fact that the base status chance is already that high, I totally went into more damage going for 2 90% elemental mods, opting for corrosive with charge shell and contagious spread, and then the last 2 mod slots are pretty much up to personal preference. You could go for example for more fire rate, with this one definitely worth it, but I personally went into more damage with Toxic Barrage and Vigilante armaments. This right here would be the full build, and it is definitely capable of dealing with arbitration or sortie type enemies up to level 100-ish. However, when you go into Steel Path, this one starts falling short a bit, so how about now we take a look at a more potent Steel Path viable build. And as always, if you could spare a like, I would be super happy because it helps big time with the algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. Alright, so when it comes to Steel Path, we have 2 options to build our Kuva Sobek. Option 1 is to ignore damage over time and try to kill enemies directly with the first shot, and option 2 would be to ignore the direct damage and rather opt for damage over time through /status effects. Let's take a look at the direct damage approach first. Since this is a Steel Path optimized build, our base damage is going to come from our Primary Weapon Arcane, in which case I went for Primary Deadhead. However, if you're not that much into headshots, you could definitely also go for Primary Merciless. Also, since with this one we're only interested in direct damage and not so much into status, I added Prime Point Blank on top of the Arcane to get even more base damage. Then again the crit with critical deceleration and this time primed ravage, giving us nice critical performance. Tons of corrosive with primed charge shell and contagious spread against Knightmare. Galvanized savvy for more status chance and even more damage, as well as galvanized hell to give us that big fat multi-shot bonus. And then, to top it off, we add primed cleanse Knightmare to give us that sweet 55% faction damage bonus. This right here would be the full build, and as you can also see in the background, this one is quite powerful. It is definitely able to one-shot level 180 Steel Path heavy gunners. However, especially if you want to go up against even higher level enemies, or in general enemies that have even more armor, then this direct damage build kind of falls off around enemy level 200. In this case, what you want to opt for would be the slash-based damage over time build that we're going to take a look at now. Also here, we get our base damage from the primary weapon Arcane. However, since we're not aiming to kill on shot directly, we have to go for primary Merciless because primary Deadhead would not trigger with slashes. And of course, when I'm talking about slash, I'm talking about Hunter munitions that converts critical hits into slashes. Meaning this build definitely has to focus on getting as many crits out of the weapon as possible. That's why, of course, we go again with critical deceleration and primed ravage. I should mention though that even with those two mods, we're only ending up at 63% crit chance on the weapon, which means that if you want to run this setup, it is pretty much a must to put Arcane Avenger on your Warframe, giving you another flat 45% crit chance on top, meaning with this one, this weapon will always crit, and therefore Hunter munitions can ramp up to its full potential. Then, we of course need faction damage to get the double dipping effect. I modded for Viral with Frigid Blast and Toxic Barrage because Viral makes the enemies weaker to your damage and therefore pairs very nice with slash builds. And to top it off, Galvanized Hell of course for more multi-shot and Galvanized Savvy for the status chance as well as some additional damage. If you wanted to, you could go and use an Exilus mod. It's not required, but I wanted to test it out and went for Narrow Barrel, making the spread of the shotgun a bit narrower and therefore rewarding accurate aim. This right here would be the full build, and if you ask me, the Kuva Sobek right now is already on par with the best Hunter munitions slash shotguns in the game right now, for example the Corinth Prime. But, and this is the big but, it will not stay this way, because the Kuva Sobek is going to make a huge jump in its power in just 1 or 2 weeks, and that is because of a very special mod. Let's talk about that. See, the Kuva Sobek is very special in the sense that it has access to 3 different weapon augment mods. I think no other weapon in the game has access to that many, so let's take a minute and talk about them. First off, Shattering Justice coming from the Steel Meridian Syndicate. It is not worth it, you could use better options here, so let's not further talk about it. The next one though is the Golden Child, and the one that's going to make this weapon much stronger as soon as we get access to it, and that would be Clip Delegation. This one can be obtained from the current Nightwave season, however, in order to get to that level, we will have to wait 1 or 2 more weeks, so unfortunately I cannot showcase this mod to you just yet. However, just looking at the description alone already shows this one is quite the banger. For every shot in your current magazine that you hit, the next magazine after reload will get 15% more status chance as well as multi-shot. This one stacks up to 15 times, meaning that if you hit 15 shots in your current magazine, which shouldn't be a problem because you have a magazine size of 20 shots, the next magazine can have up to plus 225% in both multi-shot as well as status chance. This one will be incredibly powerful and turn the Kuva Sobek, in my opinion, into the best Hunter munition slash shotgun in the game. Definitely play the Nightwave because Clip Delegation has to go onto every Kuva Sobek build out there. However, there is a third one going by the name Acid Shells, and this is a very special and very unique one because what it does is, when you kill an enemy with the Kuva Sobek, it will explode, dealing 450 corrosive damage, which is not all that interesting, but what is interesting is that in addition to that, it will also deal 45% of that enemy's maximum health in a 50-meter AoE explosion to enemies around it. This is very interesting because it's percentage-based damage and therefore scales with enemy level. Now, to be fair here, this mod is actually not all that powerful in day-to-day Sobek gameplay on your standard average Warframe. However, pair it with the right Warframe and the right build, and this thing turns into a chain reaction of explosive carnage the world has never seen before. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. Alright, so 45% percentage-based damage sounds nice at first, but if we factor in damage reduction through enemy armor, and the fact that the scaling of this one kinda doesn't do well in Steel Path, on a normal Warframe, this mod kinda does nothing and should never be used. But there is one special frame in the game who can get the absolute most out of this and turn it into one of the coolest mods in the game, and that would be Saryn. See, Saryn has a skill called Toxic Lash. What this does is, it infuses your weapons attacks with toxin damage. And when you put acid shells on your Sobek, the explosion that it causes and all the enemies that it hits with that explosion, all those hits will also be infused with the toxin damage from Saryn's Toxic Lash. Now, in and of itself, this damage is sure nice but doesn't quite get the job done just yet, but Saryn can do way more. First of all, with her fourth ability, she can deal viral damage to all the enemies in the vicinity, making them more susceptible to your damage and therefore weakening them. And in addition to that, with her first skill, she can spread corrosive spores in the entire room, and those spores deal corrosive status effects, therefore over time reducing the enemy armor. And if you do it right, mod for enough power strength and reduce the enemy's armor far enough, then the toxin-infused explosions from acid shells can actually kill even armored enemies in one shot, and when those enemies get killed by the explosion, they re-trigger the explosion from acid shells, leading to super duper destructive chain reactions, as you also see in the background. Especially against Corpus, this one is very strong because they're naturally weak to toxin in the first place, and I just gotta say, I love this build. As for the Sobek build itself, it's actually pretty simple. Just put acid shells on whatever you build you're running in the first place. This right here would be mine. I have a Riven that gives me viral in and of itself because it has toxin and cold. Of course, this was a very brief and quick rundown of the whole thing, and I definitely want to go and take some time to explore this Saryn build in detail and give you a full video, including this crazy Kuva Sobek build. So, if you don't want to miss out on that, you might want to consider maybe leaving the channel a sub so you don't miss the video day one. Welcome to the crew. The Kuva Sobek is not the only new Lich weapon though. We also got the Tenet Galaxion, and this one might be a complete game changer. So if you haven't already, then definitely also check out my detailed overview of it right here. Another big shout out to Niels V, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nost Linux Gaming, Lycan Shepherd, Turtle Pier, Shadow Soul, JPT Kochman, Pepperwolf, Ondakanio2, Misfire DX, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot and have an awesome weekend.